All right. Good afternoon or evening,
Hi.
everyone. Hi, Leslie. How you doing?
Hi, Mark. I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, pretty
Good to
good.
see you again in the dive.
Yeah. It's good to be back in the dive. What are you drinking today?
You're going to be impressed, so just prepare yourself. I'm having, it's barely visible, I'm having the finest sangria from the vineyards at Costco.
Oh, very nice.
It's delightful, very hard to find.
So you if you got it at Costco, you've probably got a whole
Like
crate of it in that case. Yeah,
just a
very
really
nice.
large one. Yeah, left
Today,
over from the husband's work party. So, if we
oh,
have it, we drink
fantastic.
it. Yeah.
Even better, exactly. I'm drinking Big Rig, which
Great.
is oh sorry, it's called Ola. It's Ola, and
Hey.
it's from Big Rig Brewery, which is a Mexican style cerveza, which I understand to be Spanish for beer. Um,
Indeed.
and yeah, it's kind of hoppy, so it's good stuff. Anyway, it's
Well,
beer.
I'm impressed that we didn't plan it and yet we have this mutual Spanish theme going. So good for
Yeah, that's
us.
right. What are the
Great. You know what
chances?
they say about great minds.
Exactly. And talking of great minds,
Hmm.
who are we going to
Indeed.
be interviewing today?
Our good friend Keith Higinbotham, who is a director and creator of accents and dialects and in the video game space. And he does many other things. He's a great actor as well. But I think we are focusing today on his work with video games. And you have a son who's going bonkers over the fact that we're talking to Keith. So this
That's
has
right.
generated some buzz in your house.
Yeah, I mentioned Baldur's Gate 3 and that Keith had worked on that. And he was like, "What? Really? Oh my God." So he was getting very excited about that. So he has supplied a question for me to ask Keith later. Anyway, so I guess we should bring him on because
Let's
Keith
do
is a
it.
is a very busy man,
He's
and I
very,
don't like to keep him waiting. So I'm going to bring him in. Hi, Keith. How are you doing
there
there?
he
Hello.
is.
Hello, everyone. You all
Hi,
right?
friend.
Yeah.
Doing
How's it
great.
Great to
Great
going?
to
see
see
you.
you.
I like the drink choices. I'm on Goose Island IPA. Is
Brilliant.
Oh,
so
yes.
cracked a cold one. It's 9 o'clock here, so why not?
It's time. It's past time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's about time. Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for having me.
Um, all right. So, yeah, so you've been busy, Keith. You've been busy on stuff. And, I'm just tell us what you've been up to lately. And then we're going to just throw a load of questions at you.
Yeah. Well, yeah. As you say, I've been sort of all over the place really since I last saw you both in person. So I'm still. I do a sort of day and a half at a well-known London drama school where I teach speech to the master's students, and I've been teaching verbatim performance and impressions as well to the
Wow.
undergraduates, which has been fun. Got a last week next week, which is good laugh. And what else have I been doing? Well, I've been directing games, which has been big. So I do a lot of accent coaching in my private coaching business. So I've got a few clients there as well that I keep up with, and at the same time, I've been working for a company called Pit Stop Productions, Pit Stop Studios, who basically records the voice and motion capture for video games. And I started that for about January
Mhm.
this year, and was sort of thrown into the deep end, really, and was working on Baldur's Gate, as you said, and
Mhm.
that was definitely a baptism of fire because I hadn't really directed games before.
So that
Um,
was your first.
that was
Wow, I
my
didn't know
first.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, my first one. I've been playing a lot of games over the years, and funnily enough, my last name's Higinbotham. One of the people that created or invented video games was called William Higinbotham. So it's
Any
Oh,
relation?
destiny, right?
I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe I should look into it. But yeah, so I was like,
Fate.
it's meant to be, you know.
There's a Higinbotham thing going on.
Yeah,
The running theme.
yeah,
So,
I've been doing
all
that
right.
and other games as well.
Excellent. Yeah. And anybody who's interested in all the amazing stuff that Keith has been working on, you can just go to IMDb and put his name in there, Keith Higinbotham, and you'll see all this amazing stuff come up. So, Keith, my first question for you is, how do you begin to create an accent that represents a character?
Good question, and one that probably doesn't have a straightforward answer. So I really have to sort of go back to why I do this and why I've wanted to do this, and actually have recently for a AAA project been asked to create an accent and perform it for something. So that's been recent, and now the world of constructed languages is a big thing, right? You look at what, I mean, J.R.R. Tolkien was probably the first who really got sort of famous for that, and there's Lord of the Rings, right? And obviously we've got all the Game of Thrones and stuff, and books, fantasy books and stuff have conlangs. My thing was, what about conlex? What about those ones that are created not from a language but instead just a different accent? And it came from a fact of like thinking about, okay, so we're looking at Lord of the Rings. If the elves are using, I don't know, unvoiced alveolar trills in their actual language, why are they suddenly which is a yeah.
Okay.
And so they're like, when stuff like that, right?
Right.
And I'm like, well, then why, if that's the case, why are they non-rhotic and RP when they speak the sort of English language? So that was my kind of thing, and I was like, is there a reason for it? And so I kind of went in that direction really when I was doing my masters, and I was like, wow, it's got to be somewhere doing this. So we recreated the Orcs dialect, right? Because based upon the sort of languages that we got given from Tolkien, looked at it from the very start of Elvish, right? And then kind of worked our way down and saw how it split. And we looked at like Black speech, we looked at the dwarf language that was made and stuff. And then we wanted to have a look at what a Moria orc and what a Mordor orc and an Uruk-hai, what they would sound like and how they would differ, really. Because I'm Cockney, as you lot know, and as you could probably tell everybody. And I was like, well, why the orcs always like, we're gonna do this thing, and it's.
I want to pull you up on that though, Keith, because you are from Bromley in southeast London, and so is my wife. And if anybody calls her a Cockney, she gets most upset and says, "I'm from southeast London. I am not a Cockney. I'm not from East London." Like she gets very. So I mean, you just describe yourself as Cockney. So
well,
what's going on there?
I think that there's, I think it can get to the point of splitting hairs, really. And I think that I don't think that there are a lot of people with a true Cockney accent anymore. If you look at some of those videos and stuff of the people in the East End, they don't sound like me. They've got so many differences there. But I think this is what it's sort of turned into,
and there's some current discussion about if that, whether or not that really exists anymore anyway. We don't have to go there, but there's been some of that.
They've all gone to Essex. They're all in Essex now. Yeah.
It's interesting. If you hear people from Essex, it's got that kind of, I don't know, a bit more twang in it, right? But if you go just across the bridge and you go to so you go across the Dartford crossing, only about 10 miles away or something like that, into Kent, and you go to Dartford, then people talk like that, like me. So it's
cool.
It's a kind of different sound, really. I haven't done a lot of research into it, to be honest, but you can hear it and you can notice it,
And because you're from that region, you're from the region of southeast England, you're going to hear it a lot more in the same way that I would hear whether someone's from Birmingham or whether they're from the Black Country, you'd be able to hear that. I'd be able to hear those because our ears are tuned into it. Anyway, I'm kind of going off topic a little bit. I just wanted to ask about that.
So I'm curious about the process you were describing of drilling down from Elvish and where these accents are going. what kind of time are we talking about? How much do you lose yourself in a process like that? And how, I mean, you just wake up like 18 hours later and you've got it all mapped out, or how
Well,
does that work?
you know, I'd like to say that you know it takes a long time of knuckling down and doing it, but I've got ADHD, as we all know, and as you guys know, and I I work very well under pressure in a very short amount of time, and that's when the hyper focus works. So really,
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking at the sort of length of time it would take, it might take, you know, maybe, you know, 3 weeks of real testing and you know, going through that. But also as well, that's not the finished product, right? Once you've
Yeah.
done something, you've created it, then we've got to go beyond that. We've got to see how it works.
Mm-hmm.
But it would, you know, I'd probably say that it was like a good solid chunk of time, but it took about 2 weeks, I think, of looking into that for research. And
Right.
what we did was I kind of looked at the phonology of these languages and stuff and thought, right, well, we've got to be using what we've got here, right? We've got to use this. So we're not going to try and go too far out of that. But then it kind of went beyond. So then it's not just the accent, right? It's about how the voice kind of appears, how it kind of comes about, you know, that creature voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
we went into sort of finding the physicality of these orcs, right? And then also had a look at their environment. You know, if they're in a cave, they're in a cold cave and stuff, that's going to make them form into something else. And you can see that those orcs are kind of crushed in those little tunnels and stuff like that. And so they're going to have a kind of a different sound to say something like an urukai, which is, you know, orc bred with man. And so these huge hulking things that stand up that have, you know, quite a lot of lung power and can bellow
Mm-hmm.
are going to have a completely different sound as well, even though they speak pretty much the same language. So that's what we
Very
had to
cool.
look at there. And it kind of went beyond that. And then for my dissertation, my thing was, is it possible, because we use the language, right? The language is already there. So then
Mm-hmm.
how do we go beyond that? And if we don't have a language, how do we build something then? Because then it's kind of all up in the air.
Yeah.
And so I did a thing called Dungeons and Dialects, and I focused on like a dwarf dialect and an Aarakocra, which are like bird people.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked at that, and we started with the bird people because I thought it would be easier that way if they have a different anatomy,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. How do we do that? And that was a bit easier. You know, I say easier. I got an empty toilet roll and then used that as a beak and kind of worked out how much of a narrow space they would have in that.
Love it.
What that would
Physical
sound.
modeling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then kind of working out, all right, so then if they've got that, then do we sort of extend the vowel space and make it smaller? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
it kind of like then becomes sounds maybe you can't quite get. And so that's when we start talking about, right, can we use a bit of like computer technology and stuff just to tweak things a little bit? And we looked at, you know, they've got 2 voice boxes, birds, so that's why they've got that kind of 2-tone thing. Can we layer the voice?
Mm-hmm.
But then I wanted to look at dwarves because I was like, there's similar anatomy to, you know, to humans. But then we really knuckled down into the environment. You know, what happens to animals as they evolve in caves and stuff like that? How do they then communicate with each other? We also looked at geographical linguistics to see in what environments and what parts of the world there is more prevalence of, you know, these sort of sounds, you know,
Did you use WALS? WALS?
No, what's that?
I can't remember what it stands for. It's something WALS. I'll find it. But basically it is an online resource that is free, that is the World of Atlas language structures. And it's got, so the World of Atlas language structures, WALS, it's a large database of structural properties of languages gathered from descriptive materials like reference grammars by a team of 55 authors. And they've got all kinds of things in there, like the different features of different languages, consonant inventories, vowel quality inventories, loads of stuff. And it maps them throughout the planet. I thought you know, that might
Funnily
be
enough,
something.
I've just looked at the website and yeah, I did use that.
Yeah.
There you go. That's how much attention I pay to the names of things and stuff like that. But yeah, no, we did use that. And that was really, really helpful, But then you've got to go beyond that, because at the end of the day, we're doing this as a form of it's got to be consumed by an audience, right? And so there's got to be a level of knowing what the audience want and what they're going to resonate with. And if that's the case, then we have to then sort of tweak things and stuff to fit whatever audience's ear it is, and that's when the sort of, I guess, a bit of artistic license comes into it. My whole thing
So are you talking about like effect at that point, like the maybe non-language sounds that they might want to be hearing, or are you predicting their preferences around the language and accent sounds? I mean, what is it that you mean that they want to consume? Like what do you mean by preference?
So if you consider what we do as accent and dialect coaches as well, right? We can do sometimes, most of the time, too good of a job that people can start going, I don't quite, right? And rightly or wrongly, we have to sort of bend things a little bit to sort of fit the brief. And that's the kind of thing here. So for instance, the Aarakocra language, dialect that I made, when there was a break in, I don't know, a syllable or something like that, I'd add in a whistle or a or something like that in the middle of it, right? And so then it becomes a little bit disjointed and difficult to follow. So then we've got to try and make that a little bit smoother. So also as well, so an actor can do it as well, right? So they can actually act through the lines, because we're doing this for performance, right? It's not, I think that that's the difference when it comes to when we're talking about constructed languages, right? A lot of the people that I've seen on Reddit, there's some great, some great what they call subreddits on conlangs and how to make them, and a lot of them are not intended to be performed, as it were. They might be spoken a bit, but they, it's going to be for that person and stuff, but it's not for actors to go and perform it. So then they have to change it there. So someone like David J. Peterson, who created the languages for Game of Thrones, well, sort of didn't create them fully, but kind of expanded upon what George R. R. Martin gave. He had to consider what the actor could do as well. He had to kind of think about that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, like on Game of Thrones, all of the characters are humanoid, whereas like the characters that you've been writing for are kind of more bird-like people. So. And then I was just thinking is that like how far can you take it? Because I understand what you're saying is they've got to be performed, but again, it's mocap. So like, okay, these are people that are doing motions, but they're playing non-humans. How much can you rely on then working on that in post-production and adding something in post that a human wouldn't do? Like a human wouldn't make
sense.
More
more forgiveness, I guess.
That's
because it's not human. Yeah.
That is a good question. And that's why I think this is why I love games so much, because I think it's a different beast altogether, right? And it's a completely new thing. You're watching computer generated graphics, all that kind of stuff, and they are kind of real people behind it. But I think you can do like a lot more with it, and people are a lot more. I think people want to be immersed entirely into these worlds, right? And so when they are immersed entirely in these worlds, they want to live in it. They want to see it. They don't want something that's going to remind them of, Karen next door, right? So they want to be making sure that there's some kind of, new thing that they can get themselves lost in. And so that's what's exciting about this world, because now we're getting into a step, we're getting up a level into what's possible. And I think that's exciting. What is possible. You see these creatures that they make that I've seen some very impressive mocap people create through their own bodies, right? There's a guy called Ace Rule who's incredible, who has a company called Creature Bionics, and he makes like the arm extensions and like the stilts, and he has like tails and stuff like that they can wear as these monsters. You can see him moving like this, and it totally transforms you. But it's difficult. But then you get to do so much for creating these creatures that if you then blend in these dialects or these new sounds and stuff like that, people are going to be, I think, more inclined to be really into that, because then they can, I don't know, they can have subtitles on that can kind of give them the gist of what's going on, maybe a little bit more. And do you know what I mean? There's I think there's more scope for a bit of freedom and exploration and possibilities there.
That's awesome. That's exciting.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, pushing the boundaries. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So
are there, when you're doing this work, a single project or maybe going from one to another, do you find that you, in your toolkit, which is ample, right? You have access to a lot of sounds and gestures and your understanding of how accents and dialects work. Do you find that you reach for particular sounds or gestures with a lot of frequency, like because you know that this one achieves a certain effect and it worked for me another time, and that kind of thing? I mean, do you reach for some favorites, and if so, can you do them for us?
Yeah,
I might have to plug up my laptop, so my head is going to disappear, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be based upon, the first thing that we do is the thing that we're comfortable with, I think, first of all, because if I can't do it and I've got limited time, it's sort of it's difficult, isn't it? Because then you kind of go, oh no, I want to put this sound in, but it's really hard. So yeah, there probably are some sounds that I go towards, maybe especially for like big sort of beefy characters, a lot of kind of, cool, like, cool, and stuff like that. These kind of back clicks and stuff that are really sort of powerful, and I really like them, But also as well, there's a scope for so much freedom and play there that you have to sort of ask yourself, am I working only within these parameters that they've been given me, or even am I working within these parameters that I've been given? Can I go sort of beyond that? And so I do try to push through, and I think that like the Aarakocra dialect that I made was really going towards that and trying to use maybe a lot more sounds that I don't use, maybe like a sort of sound which I don't have, which might be a Welsh, the Welsh language and stuff. And then how can we kind of expand upon that? But it's like, as with all things, you've got to think about what's cool as well, right? What's going to sound cool? What's going to resonate well? What's going to be scary? And I think the difficulty that I have, and the thing that I don't want to do, is that I don't want to go towards an othering of real world sounds and people, right? So the whole thing that I did this for, when I talk about elves, and the RP sort of thing, my whole point was that Western fantasy is, it's based upon a really Eurocentric view of the world. And so when we look at the sounds that are being made by the Dothraki in Game of Thrones, they are quite literally called guttural sounds and stuff like that. And they will be like, stuff like that. And so then they are being othered because they're not the main part. The main part of the people that are going, you there, John, come back, and stuff like that. And so it's like, okay.
You know nothing, Jon Snow. So I recognize that accent.
So that's the thing, right? And so my kind of thing is like, right, so it could be that we are using these sounds and we should be using these sounds, but I think that we have a duty to start putting them and using them in the right way. Why can't we make a main character that is loved by all have something that uses a lot of Middle Eastern sounds? Why can't we do stuff like that? So I think there's we've got a duty to do this. I for some reason keep pursuing this idea of dialect, constructed dialect, when I was told it couldn't really happen, and it has. So I'm sort of pushing for it to happen even more. And so I feel like that's a kind of thing on my shoulders that I want to make sure that I do a good job with that, and I don't want to rely on this thing of othering. I think that Brandon Sanderson is a writer who's doing this really well in the way of what's it called, the King Killer Chronicles, with the Stormlight Archive. That's it. Sorry, the Stormlight Archive. And you know, a lot of all the main parts are not white people. You know, and so there's actually one character who is from a land very far away, who is ginger, fair-skinned, and bright blue eyes, right? And so she's seen as other. And how cool is that? You know, like, wow, that's amazing. So let's
actually, in my experience, I find that wherever you go in the world, ginger people are seen as other.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I've definitely got some ginger blood. My nan was ginger, and it's for me it's the hair color of the Viking of the Norse. You know, it's like it's cool, all about the Celt. You know, I think it's like cool warrior stuff, but also as well, you know, I live my life like a Lord of the Rings dwarf. So I always want to just have the ginger locks thick.
Yeah, and you got the beard as well.
I just got to get the plait, you know. That's
yes.
Gotta get the plait down.
Couple more months, you got it.
It'll be there. Yeah. It'll be there. I think I just got to keep it groomed, you know.
So this brings me. I think this is a great segue into another question, because my son and I, one of the things that bonds us with my son Magnus is that we have created conlangs together. And there's one that we have ongoing, which is for dwarves. It's for some dwarven people. So he really got into that. I mean, he's 21 now, and it's still something that it's like, yeah, we need to get back into this. So he has a question for you, which is really, I think you've answered a lot of them already, but I think I'm just bringing this one in because it fitted in when you mentioned the dwarves. What tips do you have for anyone creating a conlang? Because there's a lot of us out there.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's a difficult one because I'm not a linguist. You know, I'm not Dr. Leslie. Do you know what I mean? I'm and I don't have that much knowledge with linguistics. And you know, I have friends that work a lot in, you know, big high end shows that do that as a job. And I remember one of my friends showed me their, you know, the way that they kind of did it. And the way they did it was that they would have a word, but they'd also know the etymology in the world of that word, of how it got there, right? Yeah. And I was looking at it like, you know,
it's another level, right? It sort of gives it that depth. Yeah.
And I think that, you know, the next thing that I'd like to do, I really want to do, is get serious about learning a language, so I have a different understanding of sentence structure and stuff like that, and grammar, you know, all those things. So, you know, I was trying to learn, but it's just these hyper focused moments. I was learning sort of Latin for a bit, so I just wanted to see how that thing works, you know, and that's given me a bit more ideas. But I'd say what you sort of want. There's a really good book actually by David J. Peterson on this, who's the guy who created the languages for Game of Thrones. It's called The Art of Language Invention, and I had that book with me all the time, just kind of flicking through it and stuff, because you could get a lot of it, you know, use a lot of it for constructed dialects or conlangs. And what he sort of says is a really good thing is to build the phonotactics of the language, right? And so then you get an idea of what you want it to sound like. You know,
I should mention what phonotactics is, because the three of us here are going, yeah, exactly, the phonotactic. But
they're a little too happy over that word. Yeah.
There may be some people here that are like, what the are they talking about?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think Dr. Leslie should explain this one, because this is her bag.
Well, it's really a given language's preference for the way it arranges its sounds. So, you know, you can have a plosive with a liquid, so like a k with an o next to each other. That's a phonotactic preference. You know, we like to use the term preference in a language. but that might be the case for one language, but not the other. The other may say, no, we don't like those sounds together. So how
Yeah.
you arrange sounds together and how those are meaningful in the language.
Yeah. This is how I always explain it to my students as I always take the word McDonald's and say that, okay, McDonald's. And if there's Koreans, they'd be like, okay, what do you call this? And I say,
Yeah.
McDonald. And it's like, okay, this is how we would write it, an IPA. And then it's like, okay, who's from Japan? And then it's McDonald.
Yes.
So it's gone from 3 syllables to 6.
Consonant vowel. Yeah.
Well, because of that, yeah.
Well, it's like us in the UK. We don't like saying fillet; we say fillet. So it's sort of things like I don't know about that. The ending of that sounds a bit too French for me. I'm going to go for the
basically most of the French words we've ever borrowed that we've
lieutenant
messed up.
Yeah,
lieutenant.
We're not having lieutenant. What's that?
I still don't understand how we got from lieutenant to lieutenant, but maybe we can do that in another episode.
Sheer stubbornness, I reckon.
I understand it's a long story, and I'm not going to go into it because we're here to interview Keith.
But going on that, the phonotactics, I think that's a really, really interesting way of doing it, because then you get an idea of the sound, the sort of sonic architecture of your. So that
hello,
architecture. Oh my God! There's a band name.
The name of your book.
Ladies and gentlemen, we bring you Sonic Architecture.
This song was completely built on plosives. Let's go. But yeah, it's a bit of an in-joke there. But but I think that's what you're looking for, right? When you're making a constructed language, you want it to sound a certain way. And once you understand how it's going to sound, once you've got some rules there, then you can start playing around in it. I think the time that I will make one, because I will, is when someone employs me to make one. I'll learn what I've got to do, and I'll do it on the job. But I don't have the focus and the sort of want to do that sort of a deep dive just yet. But I'd love to have a look at the dwarf language once you're done with that. Maybe we could build something and try and get it into a game.
Now you're talking.
Yeah.
I can sense the excitement.
Here. The collaboration was born here.
Well, we'll share our files with you and on the understanding, but you might have to sign an NDA.
Yeah, no worries. Do those notes.
Yeah,
awesome.
so cool.
But no, it's but going on the that thing, like the thing I think about conlangs, just going on from that, is that the beautiful thing about it is it's an ever evolving and changing thing. And what's lovely about it is you could create that language, right? And then you could come back to it at a later date and you can keep adding, but also as well, you can see how it would change over time, depending on who they've been with, where they've migrated to and stuff like that. And how awesome would that be to create like a language that was for like number one game, right? So the first one, another one set 200 years later, and then going, right, well, this is how we've developed into this new sound now. Like,
that's awesome.
And then you just get these things living. You make worlds. I get very excited about it.
Well, which is what
you're historical linguist. You're born historical linguist.
And also, I mean, like the writer of The Hobbit and so on, J.R.R. Tolkien. Like he didn't start off as an author, right? Like he was a conlanger from day one. Like he was the dean of Birmingham University, or was it University of Birmingham? I don't know which, but he was basically in his spare time, which I don't know how he had spare time. His thing, and we're talking about 100 and something years ago. In his spare time, he was conlanging, and that was the thing. I mean, there's even a letter that he wrote to who would become his wife, his girlfriend, basically admitting sheepishly, "Oh, I've been spending a lot of time making up languages." no one's gonna ever speak. So basically, what he did was he created the whole Middle Earth. That wasn't his first thing. The first thing was, the Elvish language, and all those other Sindarin and all of those. He created those first because he based the Elvish language. The Elvish language. He based the Elvish language on Welsh and took out the bits he didn't like and kept the bits in that he loved. And then it's like, okay, if anyone's going to actually get to know these languages, I'm going to have to build a world around it. So that's what he did with.
Well, isn't that the way languages evolve? You take out the bits you don't like and you keep the bits you do. Isn't that
pretty much?
He just did it a little faster than most.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but you can see how he developed it all the time. He had to kind of work it out how it would change. In the books as well. And it's so. I mean, it's mad. You think about that, as you say, that guy was just sitting there going, "I just wanted to do it for me, really," and look at what it's become now, and it has a possibility of doing that. And I think that there's just something really beautiful about getting people into having a real understanding of language and an appreciation of language that much that you'd love to give it a go. Awesome, amazing, and still have that progression of the stuff. I was looking at it now that he started on primitive Quendian and common Eldarin, and then Quenya, and then Goldagrin, and then that changed into Noldorin, and then it changed into Sindarin, and there's all sorts of things.
Yeah. Wow. So he was at it big time. Like he was going for it. And I was like, what am I doing? It's like, and I think his wife at some point was like, why don't you just write a book? And it's like, okay, I'll create a world around, make people, invent people that will be speaking these weird languages. Well,
no one else bloody will. So why am I?
That Dean gig ceased to be any fun. We got to leave that junk behind. Yeah.
So, I've got a question, which is, what is something in your process that would surprise people that don't know much about this kind of work?
Oh, what work?
Good question.
Good point.
Yeah. Well, we haven't talked about your directing work. You're directing actors in mocap and video games and stuff like that. So maybe we'll go into that a little bit.
That's cool. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I was going to say, because I think that creating the dialect stuff, I don't think people will have an idea of how that would work anyway. So I think a lot of it would be quite surprising. That's that. But when it comes to directing games, I think a lot of people forget that that voice acting is acting. And so when you're in these booths, if you're only doing like VO, right, you've only got that microphone in front of you, and then you've got the context of something, given to you by the director or whoever else is there. But then also, if you're in a mocap studio, you've got your mocap suit on, right, and stuff. But then still, you're in a box with loads of cameras pointed at you, wearing a skin tight suit with loads of essentially ping pong balls.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, it's like, okay, so then what is it that we need to do? Well, we need to use our imagination. And the thing that I've been doing, I've been really fortunate now that this is, well, I just wrapped on a game that I was lead support director on yesterday. Just wrapped on that game. And the thing that kind of really baffled me and actually surprised me was how much we needed to bring in the physicality in voiceover, right? Because actually, it's something like if someone says, I pass you this sword or whatever, I pass you my ancestor's sword, look after it well. Now, if you can hear when someone's just kind of speaking into the microphone and going, I pass you this sword, right? One, you need to think about who you're speaking to. Two, then you need to see what it is that you're passing over to them.
Yeah.
Because just seeing that, there's something that changes in the voice that makes it, that just anchors it in truth and realism. And that's what we're trying to get. Even these games that are like a bit sort of more theatrical, a bit kind of over the top, you know, you still know when someone's just trying to do a funny voice. Right? The
Yes.
funny
Great
voice
point.
or the good voice
Yeah.
is a good part of it. Of course, you need to sound like the part, but if
Mhm.
I don't believe you, then it doesn't work. And actually, you know, the thing is, the voice doesn't lie. Like you can't,
Yes.
like, do you know
That's
what I mean?
brilliant. Yeah.
You don't, and you can lie with the voice, but you have to
Yeah.
believe your lie. You
Yeah.
know, you
Yeah.
have to believe it for then people to believe you. And
That's
so
right.
if you're just kind of doing it and it's kind of floating around and it's not anchored in anything, you can hear it. There's nothing to hide
Yeah.
behind.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not
That's so
saying.
Yes.
good.
That's right. Well,
Yeah.
there were those experiments, right? Which
Yeah.
I'm sure you're both aware of the experiments that they did, where they got several people to say certain things. Some of the things were not true, and some of the things were true. And they got other people to. What they did was they recorded their voices. They also recorded them saying it on video, and they also got them to. I think they got them to write it or something. So basically, what they did, the whole experiment was to figure out how easy is it for people to tell if they're lying about something. And of course, a lot of people thought that, oh, well, the easiest way to tell if somebody is lying is to be able to see them do it. Because there's that old tradition of people like touching their nose or looking around and looking shifty. So those are the old traditional beliefs that, oh, you can tell if someone's lying just by looking at how they say the thing. Or, you know, just by putting a, you know, lie detector on them to see if they sweat or the heart rate goes up and so on. But apparently, what they figured out was that most people worked out what the lies were from just the audio, hearing the voices, and they could tell certain subtleties in those voices. And what you say, Keith, about the whole thing about when an actor is portraying a character well, when they're doing it properly, when they're doing it because they are that character and they believe what it is they're saying, they're no longer acting, because you can tell, like you say, you can tell if someone's just acting. But when they're saying something that you can see they believe it, that's when it works. Exactly.
Exactly that.
That's brilliant.
You've got
I'm
to-
writing that one down. The voice does not lie. I'm writing that one down. I unfortunately have to hop out of the dive because I have to meet a client in the other room. So
Bring it
Keith,
to a
can you
close.
teach me? Well, you guys can carry on, but I want to go out in a dramatic fashion. So can you teach me a death and dying sound that I will try my best to do believably as I fade out of the space?
Absolutely. So we've got to think about number one, where have you been hit? And let's say that you've been gutted, okay? Belly done, right? So it's going to come from there, okay? And so we need that first impact, always an impact sound, which can come from there. But then it's
All
going to
right.
be that dying little gurgle as you go off, you know,
All right.
as everything comes up. Sorry to be graphic, but that's how you do it, yeah? So it needs to have a little bit of a...
All right. Let's see what I got. You know, I'll come back for more takes later, but that's the first. I'm cold.
I believed it.
All right,
See you
carry
later.
on, gentlemen. Great to see you both. See you soon.
See you, Leslie. Speak to you
later.
soon. Take care. Bye.
But yeah, that's the thing that we're talking about, right? And that's the thing that surprised me most. That being a director, listening in, I was like, you know, the first bit, I was like, how on earth am I gonna know? Like, do you know what I mean? I don't know. Like, I love doing the performances and stuff like that. When I play games, I believe it. Maybe there is some that I don't believe, and I sort of take the mick out of the performance. Maybe when I'm playing the game, like, what's this? But then I had to interrogate that. Like, why can I know that? What is that? And actually, it's very, very apparent, you know. And that's not to say that the actor that does that first doesn't know what they're doing. The fact is that when you get into that booth and you've got the director, you've got the tech, you know, you've got the sound guy, right? You've got the clients on the line from whoever. It's a terrifying situation to be in, and there's nothing to hide behind. And so, well,
there's nothing you can hide when, like you say, you're in a skin tight kind of suit made out of lycra
Yeah.
There's nothing you can hide.
No one
And
does
then
splattering in those ever. So
exactly, nobody does. And then you've got the ping pong balls in order to add salt to the wound, and you've got the heat of the lights and everything. All of those things. Yeah, who wouldn't be terrified? So then, of course, you got to get through those layers of like, okay, all right, I'm actually not this person.
yeah, yes,
And I got all these lights right in my face, and
exactly.
the pressure's on. No, it's like that's got to be somewhat of a process to then get through to become that character.
Exactly. And that's the other thing, that's I think that's it's kind of moved me on to the thing that I guess is the most surprising about this work. It's not about really how amazing you sound doing that particular voice. It can sound great, like the veneer on it, awesome. It's a cool accent, tone, stuff like that. But if I don't believe you, it's worthless. And that's what I'd say about that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the thing. Like anyone that has looked into the history of acting, it is evolved so much throughout the ages, and really, it's a reflection of our expectations as different societies as we go through, because what worked maybe 10 years 20 years, definitely 100 years ago,
Mhm.
what it was that we came to expect, it doesn't fly anymore. So like if you like back in the 1700s, people would act like this,
Yes, yes.
and they would be expected to talk like that. You wouldn't, like, if anybody came on and acted the way that people do now, people would be like, what is he doing? That's not how actors are supposed to be. I
Yeah.
just paid, a shilling to get in here to watch this shit.
Yeah.
So it's weird. Like, it's amazing how these things have changed and how we've come to expect things to be a certain way. Like theater should be a certain way. Like now we go into a theater, we're expected to shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
Shakespeare's time, it was like everyone's like, yeah, so what have you been doing today? Yeah, yeah. And like the play's
Oh,
going
God, I've
on.
got syphilis. Yeah, yeah.
How's your bunion? Yeah. I heard there's a plague north of the river. Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And
To
and
be or not to be. Yeah, it's all that.
yeah.
But
Like,
it's not even that long ago, mate. Like I do a perfect thing of a perfect example, sorry, of that is like when I teach Shakespeare, because I performed and toured Shakespeare for many years, in my 20s. And like the thing that I show people now, one, I show them, which is great still, playing Shakespeare, right? With all Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart and stuff like that doing that, which is a great watch because they do really, really live in some of that language, and it's beautiful to hear. But the best example is watching Laurence Olivier do Richard III, right? Because he was considered the pinnacle, still
yeah,
known now as like the best actor that has ever been.
the Shakespearean actor. Yeah, exactly.
And then you watch, Richard III now, and it's now is the winter about discontent, and it's
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, it's such a very different sort of flavor, the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you
So
hear
how's it going to develop? How's it going to develop now? What's it going to be games, in the future? We're getting so cinematic with this stuff. When's it going to change? How's it going to change? What am I going to be doing, in 30 years' time if I'm still directing these games? How's it going to be different? Are we still going to be voicing them? Anyway, that's another.
I think that, yeah, when it comes to Shakespeare, at least, I think we've got a pretty good idea about how that is going to change in the next few years. I mean, I think we were having a chat about this during our certification in London with KTS. And I think that the subject came up at one point where it was like, we were talking about how Shakespeare used to be always done in an RP accent, even if it were portrayed in North America. It was like, oh my God, I got to do Shakespeare. I've got to really polish up my British accent. And it's like, and now that has kind of gone. It's slipping
Yeah.
away. But there was that whole time where it was, well, if you're doing Shakespeare, it must be said in such a way. And now that's all falling away. And I can't remember, there was it was something I saw on TV, which was some years ago now. There was an American actor that came over to the UK and went around to a lot of the, well, in North America, they would call them the projects. In the UK, the housing, I can't remember what they're called. I've been in Canada too long, but they went to a lot of like the flats and so on, and got young people, working class people, to be involved in a Shakespeare production. And this was like a really famous actor. I can't remember his name now, but it's out there on YouTube. So he goes around and basically they're doing Shakespeare in Cockney accents, essentially. And I think this is the way that things are moving now, rightfully so, bringing in different accents and not having that kind of the old RP thing. So I think that is the way that's going anyway.
Yeah, and it should be, you know, it should be. It was always there to sort of live within the world that you know, it was made. And like, no one spoke like that then, you know, no one spoke with an RP accent when he was around. It didn't exist. That sound didn't exist. So, you know, I played Macbeth as a Cockney Macbeth. You know, I did it because, you know, for me, if someone's working their way up, you know, like that, and murdering, you know, doing or whatever they need to do, they don't have to be, you know, from, you know, upper stock or whatever like that. You know, they can be a scrappy person who's just trying to make the best for themselves, you know, and stuff like that. And that's what it's about, you know, and that's the way you keep Shakespeare alive, is by using real people with their real sounds. You know, Ben Crystal and Ben and
Ben and his dad.
Yes, that's it. Ben and his dad.
Ben and his dad, Daddy Crystal.
David Crystal. You want to say?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
David, yes, David, of course.
Yeah.
Ben and David Crystal, that's right. They did a lot of OP, original pronunciation. Yeah.
Which is amazing, right? Because actually, when you listen to it, it's like, oh yeah, of course it's meant to be rhotic. Well, of course it's meant to be like, you know, sort of done like this. And so actually, the American, or the, you know, the Gen Am accent is actually closer to what they would have sounded like anyway. So who are we all to say that it should be
somewhere between? Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can actually go and listen to a reconstruction. Obviously, there's no recordings from the time, but you can listen to some recordings of people that are approaching or are trying to do it in, it's called Shakespeare OP. You can go to Paul Meyer. So Paul Meyer worked with David Crystal on this, and he's got a load of stuff on his website. Paul Meyer, MEIER, I think it is, paulmeyer.com. And there's a Shakespeare OP section in there, and it's got recordings of actors doing it, and there's texts and so on, like in IPA of like what it would sound like on the page. It's pretty amazing stuff.
So cool.
I'd love to go and see that. That would be pretty cool.
I would love that. We should do that. Yeah. Definitely. That'll be the next time you come to, or I'll go there. We'll find one.
Yeah, exactly. We need to find one. If there isn't one to find, we'll have to make one.
We'll do it. I'll be Hamlet.
Yes, exactly. Okay, I'm gonna close this down for the viewers. We'll chat after. But Keith Higinbotham, Higinbotham.
You can call me Botham with the
get it right.
You know, no, it's all right. My teachers used to call me Hug My Bottom, so you know, it's all right.
Oh, okay, so that's what. So Keith, thank you so much for being a great sport and coming on and sharing all of your knowledge and experience with us. It is fascinating, and hope we get to chat again sometime pretty soon.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me, and thank you, everybody. Cheers.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.